session, apparently I just noticed that somehow the slide got mixed up, so the when choosing should be underneath to consider, but we all get the point. Hopefully you looked at the session notes prior, so I don't like to talk a whole lot about myself, but my name is Melissa Hamilton. My company is Synergetic Solutions. I've been working with the Illinois Department of Transportation for about 11 years now, and this is my 10th TCTR conference, which is one of the most exciting conferences that I have attended as a business owner. I'm not being biased in that they do a very, very good job, so I'm excited that you all are here, and very excited to present today, as well as hoping that you guys learn a lot. If you don't mind, I do like to kind of get a feel of the room, so if this is your first TCTR conference, would you raise your hand? All right, we got some newbies, wonderful. And then as far as an attorney, have any of you hired or acquired an attorney? Yeah, okay. And then what about an accountant? All right, perfect. So you guys do have some familiarity with that. So wonderful. So today we're going to talk about, we also introduced. There we go. So this is Manny. He's going to share the information in regards to choosing an attorney. He is an EA, and he'll explain more about what an EA is as well. He is pending his DBE certification also, and he is also assisting with supportive services for IDOT as well. So those of you who are DBE certified, both myself and Manny support districts 4 through 6 on certification assistance, and we also assist with management services. So if you do need assistance with your business or QuickBooks or accounting services, those are part of the DBE program. You were certified through IDOT, and you can learn more about that at the exhibitor tables in the networking sessions as well. So today's session, we're going to talk about what to consider when choosing either of these professions. We'll go over detailed information to help you navigate through the process, things to consider, and obviously answer questions for you as well. My disclaimer that I always like to include is that this presentation is for informational purposes only. I am not an attorney, but I will be representing that part of the presentation and telling you about tips to hire an attorney. I've hired a couple of them so far in my career. And then Manny is an EA, so he is a professional within this field, but this information is definitely for informational purposes only, because at this point we don't have a full understanding of your business and the nuances to be able to provide direct advice. So take the information that we're sharing today, reach out to a professional if you need to have further discussion regarding your personal situations. And then the agenda, we're going to talk about each of these for both categories. So we'll go over first understanding their credentials for the different types of attorneys and accountants, identifying your needs, key qualities that you're going to want to consider, questions that you'll want to ask before hiring one, and then where you can go to find these professions, and then next steps in making a decision. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Manny, and he's going to start with the accounting.
Hello everyone. So today I'll be going over choosing the right accountant, and this is just an overview. Hopefully one of the traits you look for is in public speaking skills. I am extremely nervous, but I promise I'm actually good at my job. So I want you all to think of your accountant as a financial partner. We're not just crunching numbers all day, we're helping you build a solid foundation for your future. And like any foundation or any partnership, the fit does matter. So an accountant provides essential expertise in navigating financial complexities. And selecting the right accountant is a pivotal decision that directly influences your financial stability and long-term success. So whether you require assistance with tax preparation, financial reporting, or a comprehensive financial plan, understanding the critical selection factors will enable you to make a more confident and well-informed decision. So next we're going to go over each of the credentials. So the first one is the CPA, or Certified Public Accountant. This essentially is a licensed professional who has passed examination administered by a state board of accountancy. And I say state board of accountancy because CPAs are only licensed in the state that they're active in. Not to sound like a hater here, as I was introduced as an enrolled agent, but the terms CPA and accountant are often used interchangeable, and they should not be. An accountant does not need to be a CPA. An accountant can have many different credentials. For example, like myself, I'm an enrolled agent. So that is someone who is licensed by the IRS, and I've earned the privilege to represent clients in front of them. So just a little tidbit here before we click on the next slide. These credentials come with a fun perk called representation rights. So enrolled agents, CPAs, and attorneys have unlimited representation rights before the IRS. So that means that tax professionals with these credentials may represent their clients on any matters to the IRS, and that includes audits, payments and collection issues, and appeals, regardless of whether or not we actually prepared the return in question. Uncredentialed preparers do have limited practice rights, but you would like to seek a licensed preparer if you were needing extra support.
Question, sorry.
It's okay.
The CPA, would that person have the same knowledge or more knowledge than the EA? And I'm talking about the Internal Revenue Service. That's
Yes.
where I'm.
Yes, so just to repeat your question, you're curious if the CPA and the EA, the knowledge is comparable between the two?
For the IRS, especially to be on the.
Yes, I will say this is not to be a little biased. There are some IRS agents who would prefer speaking to an EA over a CPA, and that's only because all of our licensure is directed from the IRS. So I've been granted privilege and I've shown competency from the organization as actually reviewing your tax return, whereas with a CPA, just like a doctor, it's a little more general. So you're taking 4 exams in 4 broad aspects, but you could be a CPA and only do audit, you could do a CPA and only do taxes. EAs are specifically licensed, again, by the IRS to only do tax work. So we're more knowledgeable in that field.
So I'm very sorry to interrupt, and if you don't want me to wait until the end.
No, it's okay. Ask away.
The question is, so you would be able to do the taxes for us?
Yes.
But you would not be able to carry like day-to-day of accounting for us? Like
Well, I was actually going to get around to that about what I can necessarily do. So as an EA, I am licensed to do your tax prep. So I do own a business, TPH Strategies. I've hired a bookkeeper and a payroll specialist at my firm in particular to handle those services, but I can do all of them. The main difference that you'll see between an EA and a CPA is I can't sign off on audited financial statements. So only a CPA can sign off on an audit and or audited financial statements, whereas an EA is strictly focused on general accounting things, mainly tax prep. Perfect. Okay, next slide, please. So there are also other certifications with the EA and the CPA being the main two, but we will go over these in the next couple of slides. So let's go over the CPA. So the requirements to become a certified public accountant are education, examination, and experience. As of right now, you need a bachelor's degree with specific accounting courses, often including advanced accounting, audit, and tax law. And currently, in order to get your CPA, particularly in the state of Illinois, you do need 150 credit hours, which is why most CPAs go ahead and get their master's degree. I will say there is pending litigation right now to kind of change that from 150 to 120, just because at 150 credit hours is a barrier to entry for a lot of people coming out of school who would choose to rather work than continue on doing it after 2 years. For examination purposes, there are 6 sections to the CPA. This is new, but you only need to pass 4. So there are 3 core competencies, and that's financial accounting and reporting, regulation, and then audit. And now you can choose which designation of your CPA you get by passing one of the 3 exams, which is business analysis and reporting, information systems and controls, or tax compliance and planning. And you have 18 months to complete all 4. And for the experience, you just need at least 1 full year of experience working in the accounting.
Again, in order to apply for the CPA, that person will have to have an experience for a year before they can apply for the license?
No, so essentially you can get that 150 credit hours first, and then apply, and then take all 4 sections and pass them, but you actually won't get the licensure until you work for that first year. Typically that's uncommon because you typically have a full-time job while you're studying at the same time, so that those kind of just get knocked out at the same time, but those are just the requirements. But they are, as I said, they are changing right now just because there is an accounting shortage, unfortunately, currently. So these are the scopes of services that you would hire a CPA for. So auditing, as I said, a CPA or an EA can assist with this. Tax preparation or consulting services. And then the benefits of hiring a CPA are just enhanced credibility and an expert financial guidance. As I've said, not to sound like I am jealous of the CPAs, but they have co-opted the name a little bit. So when you think of an accountant, the first thing most people say is you should hire a CPA. So that enhanced credibility does help out when it comes to learning more about your business, your books, and those sorts of things. So next is the enrolled agent, which is the best one of all. And your requirements are the IRS examination, IRS experience, and background check and compliance. So the first step into getting your EA is obtaining a preparer tax identification number, or a T10, from the IRS. Now, I do want to stop right there and add that in Illinois, you actually don't need to be licensed to prepare tax return. anyone can technically obtain a P10 and sign off on a return. So whenever you get your taxes done, you always want to look at the bottom of your 1040 to see if the professional that signed your return is licensed or not. That second step will be this.
Speaking about the licensing, you said that they don't have to be CPA.
You don't have to be licensed at all to do taxes in Illinois. You could just graduate high school, get a
I can do it
P10.
myself,
You could.
but I will get in trouble.
You wouldn't.
If you do them wrong, yes, definitely. And I learned this year as well, because I've always told people that, for your taxes to get filed and processing, make sure you have a CPA. And technically, it's best practice. It's not mandatory requirement. So Manny educated me after all these years that you don't have to have a CPA or enrolled agent to do taxes. Anyone can just claim that they do taxes. And so that's why this is really important to understand what to ask and making sure that you do have a qualified professional, because ultimately, you're responsible for the tax return, not the person that you're paying to do the return. So if something's wrong, you go to jail or you pay the fee.
And I would say I had an issue. Thank God we went through service provider, so they were able to keep the cost very much. So, and I know I was taxes, but we gave it to them. So in cases like that, so have a professional. So if something does happen, you don't have to put the cost. The company has to put the cost.
I will say it depends, though. I just want to add a caveat on the issue itself. So the IRS has very strict guidelines of it is you as a taxpayer, it is your tax return, and if you sign it, you are also assuming liability of the work. There is also on the side of that, there is tax preparer liability. So I do have, E&O insurance and some of those things. Numbers can get fat-fingered sometimes when you're staring at a computer all day. So it just really depends on the type of issue where the liability will fall. But, and then so the second step is passing 3 comprehensive exams. So the 3 exams were the individual section, where it's just strictly understanding about the individuals and the 1040 tax return. There's a business section where you learn about S corporations, and partnerships. And then the 3rd exam is representation practices and procedures. And then that last step is just to pass a suitability check with the IRS, which is essentially just a very in-depth background check looking into your records, and again, getting that thumbs up from the IRS that you are who you say you are, and then you've reached that threshold to, again, be given those representation rights. So the scopes of services for an EA would be tax preparation and filing. That's what I do at my firm. Tax representation is the same thing. Like I said, you get a notice from the IRS or the Illinois Department of Revenue or any Department of Revenue. I have been granted the ability to step in front of you and the IRS, essentially. And then just strictly tax planning and consultation. And then the benefits of hiring us is just IRS expertise. Like I said, we're essentially speaking to each other here. The IRS recognizes my certification and they respect it here, so that gives us a little bit of a leg up when we're speaking to them. And then again, we have those limited tax representation rights. So next, and a little bit more of an uncommon one, is a certified management accountant. So this, to me, is more of like an internal hire. So if you were running a company, a bigger company in my opinion, you would hire a CMA on your team to kind of help manage some of the finances. And so some of the requirements here are education, examination, and experience. So you do need a bachelor's degree in accounting. You do have to pass the CMA examination, which is a 2-part exam that covers financial planning, performance, and analytics. And then the second part is strategic financial management. So again, a little bit more niche on the accounting side. And then for the experience level, you need 2 continuous years of professional management, accounting, or financial management experience. Scopes of service for this credential is just financial planning and analysis, cost management and control, and performance management. And again, these are very niche things inside of an organization, but I still want to educate you guys on the credential as well. And then the benefits of hiring this professional would be strategic financial expertise and then business performance improvement. And so lastly is the CFP, which is not technically an accountant. This would be more of a certification that your financial advisor would have, but I still want to mention it nonetheless. Their requirements are education, examination, experience, and ethics. So they have to complete the CFP board-approved educational course covering various financial topics. They have to pass a very comprehensive CFP examination, just like all the other credentials. They have to demonstrate relevant professional experience in financial planning, which again is very niche. And then they do have to adhere to the CFP board's code of ethics and professional responsibility, which is very strict. I will say there's a line between financial planning and accounting, and sometimes the lines can get blurred. For example, we both can talk about retirement planning, for instance, but I can't give you financial advice. So I also have to add that caveat where they can give you that financial advice that you're looking for. And so the scopes of service for this would be, again, financial and retirement planning, and then just investment management. Where your CFP or financial planner would partner with your tax preparer is if you want to do some sort of loss harvesting, you want to understand capital gains and capital losses and those sorts of things. I typically partner with a lot of my clients, financial advisors, to kind of make tax strategies for that. And then the benefits of hiring them is that you have a fiduciary duty to work on your behalf and make decisions on the best of your behalf, and they have comprehensive financial planning knowledge. So I would say the first thing you need to do when you're looking for an accountant or an attorney is identify your needs. And should I move it here?
I know, they are all mixed.
So you mentioned this before about payroll, but some of the specific needs that you might have are bookkeeping services, payroll services, financial statement audits, or just business valuations. So again, at my firm, we can help you with your monthly bookkeeping, your quarterly bookkeeping, and those sorts of things. We also provide payroll services, but there's also services like Gusto, QuickBooks, EDP. Financial statement audits will lean more on the CPA side, and then the business valuation is kind of just depends on since it's open who offers those services. So after you identify what specific.
Let's assume that I am coming to you to say you are an MBA, and the IDAT for the documentation to become a DBE is asking me to do business valuation. Would you be able to provide that?
I can help with that, yes.
When you say you can help with that, I'm very sorry. It does not mean you are asking me to do it myself, but you give me the guidelines.
That is a very,
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat the question. Also, I want to make sure I mention that the session's being recorded as well, so I know there's tons of information being thrown at you. This will be recorded so you can watch it again, and then you can also get my business card and the presentation slides to you. I can do so as well after the conference. So since it's being recorded, since the mic's over here, I'm repeating the questions so everyone knows why we're repeating them so that they're on the recording. So the question is basically, if you are looking for DBE certification or you're DBE certified and you're reaching out to the management services team in order to get assistance with what might be needed for providing for either certification or contracts, can you utilize the services of a EA? So the program itself, yes. IDOT, if you're certified through IDOT, there are supportive services that we can support and assist you with in accounting. Some of those things will overlap where we can't provide them under the contract with the state because they are free services that are provided by IDOT for us to assist with. If we find that they're kind of in that line of services that you may have to pay for directly, yes, you can still get them. We just have to reach out to the agency to determine whether or not the services that we're providing you fit under the supportive services program, where you don't have to pay the fee, or if we have a direct pay for those particular services. So we do it on a case-by-case basis, and then obviously we need to make sure that we're meeting those lines. The state will not pay for any taxes to be filed or done. A firm is responsible for that themselves. But for example, part of the certification application requires your personal net worth. That is something you can walk through to make sure you have all the documentation and the things that you need to have a solid personal net worth to submit with your certification application. So it's going to vary based on the situation. Does that answer the question?
So she has 10 years of experience. I'm still new, so I appreciate you working with me. So next is complexity and size. So are you a small startup just getting started? You're just looking for someone who's a little bit more affordable that can kind of help you grow as your business expands? Are you a large corporation and maybe you're looking to hire that CMA internally and you need a full team of accountants to kind of help navigate your threshold? Or you're just a sole proprietor and your business is going well, but you've been doing your own taxes on TurboTax and you're kind of just ready to sit down with someone and actually get some actual tax planning and strategy involved. And then next would be your industry expertise. Next would be your industry expertise. So that would be whether you're in healthcare, construction, you own a restaurant, or are in retail. Some of us accountants do specialize in particular industries. I would say right now, since my firm is relatively new, kind of first come, first serve, I'm learning it all right now. But there are other firms that I do know that maybe only specialize in real estate. So if you need more information about 1031 exchange, they have the expertise for that. So just understanding both the services that you need, your complexity and your size, as well as your industry expertise will really help you identify your needs when you're reaching out to the company. And then lastly is identifying your needs as an individual. So what is your tax complexity? Are you a salaried employee who just, your kids have aged out now and you're used to that $2,000 child tax credit and now you owe taxes for the first time? Are you a real estate professional and you're looking to buy your third or your fifth property and you don't know if you should incorporate or you should keep everything tied up with an LLC? Or are you looking for estate and trust planning so that way you can pass on a legacy to your family? That's really important to know going into retirement. Next is your financial goals. Are you looking for retirement planning? Are you young and you really don't know how to make a budget? Or are you looking to just maximize tax savings? You've heard about a home office deduction and that you can write up all your vehicles and all these things, but you're really trying to weed through all that noise and ask a licensed professional what's true and what's factual. What can I do to better benefit my tax story? And then lastly, and I would say this is the most important, is understanding the level of involvement that you want both from yourself and from your company. Do you want to be hands-on? Do you want my personal cell phone number and you're calling me every day to identify things and answer questions? Or would you rather just drop everything off and you focus on revenue-generating activities and it's my job to make sure that you pay the least in taxes? That's always good to know going into that meeting as well. So here are some key qualities that both an accountant and an attorney should have. And the first one is reputation and ethics. So make sure you do your research, read reviews, and check local associations to see what others might think about that firm that you're using. Verify that that professional is actually in good standing. You can search up, since we're all licensed professionals, our names are in different databases, so you can search this up to make sure that we're in good standing. And verify there's no history of disciplinary actions or ethical violations. Again, that line, while thin between what I can and cannot do, it's still very strict from the IRS on what I do when it's wrong. So just make sure that your accountant or your attorney has not crossed any ethical guidelines or anything like that. Next is communication skills, not public speaking skills. Ensure that your professional is responsive to your calls and your emails. If you call them on a Monday, hopefully they get back to you in 24 to 48 hours. And even if they don't have a response ready for you, at least they acknowledge that you called. And can they explain complex legal and tax concepts in a way that you understand? It's really easy to stay up here in tax world, but it's another thing to be able to articulate to someone who is not really their forte or their industry. The ability to do that, I would say, is really good in this profession, and it really helps you stand out. And then lastly, just compatibility. Do you feel comfortable talking to that person? Is this someone you would go have dinner with after the one meeting? Can you trust them and their team? And does your personality and their personality and values align for what you want for yourself and for your business?
And I think that last one's really important too, because there are certain professionals that you would work with that might maybe skirt the line, right? And I'm not a skirt the line kind of person. I like to follow the process, and I don't want anyone questioning anything that I've done with the legal side or the accounting side of my business. So making sure that you kind of have that understanding with that person, and they're like, oh, well, it's great, but we can make it work. That may not be something you're comfortable with, right? You might want to know exactly like, where does this fit? So I think that part's really important to ensure that your values do align with that person that you're hiring, especially in these two areas.
And then I also want to have, before we change topics, I inherited a firm, and so something I have to deal with personally is just understanding that a lot of my advice that I give might be different from my predecessor who's in his building for about 40 years or so. I want your trust as a client, but it can't be blind. I want to work with my clients, and I want to build that relationship together because you're hiring me to help you. I totally am okay if you drop off all your stuff and you want me to handle it, but it's my goal that every time we meet that you feel a little bit smarter and a little bit more comfortable reading through your own tax return and your own records after we depart for the day.
So with the ethics side, if I hired you and you suggested there's a great line, the fact that you suggested it and I agree, whose responsibility would fall on if there's a law that's broken when it comes from you? Because in the world, if we're in here to make money, why wouldn't I? If you're telling me it's great, but you're the one that has the ethics code that you're supposed to follow, so if it's great, let's go. I mean, if it's going to save you $1,000, $10,000, so where does that fall at the end of the day?
So just to repeat, your question is who's essentially liable if you get unethical professional advice advice that you do follow that ends up with you being in trouble with the
Yeah, because I wouldn't know the ethics code that you had to agree to get your license, so.
Well, I will say, I'll give you two scenarios.
Okay.
For one, when I'm engaging with clients, not that I'm suggesting anything unethical, but I will give them three options. I will say this is an option that you can take. For example, let's say you're not taking salary and you're supposed to as an S corporation owner. You can choose not to. It's not on you. I'm just letting you know that that's option one, and I don't suggest it. Option two would be, I would list out the steps, and then I'll give you option three. It's on me to document those things, so that way in that case, if something did happen and you were held liable, I can say these are the options I presented to them. I did do my due diligence by explaining to them the pros and the cons. That would be the right way to handle that thing. On the flip side, what I think more so what you're talking about is, if someone were to give you shady or internet advice, to say you can write off these things and you're writing off all your house and your cars and everything on your business, unfortunately at the end of the day, you will see you held liable for that. And that does put a little bit of a strain on our relationship, and that's why I think making sure that your accountant and your attorney is knowledgeable, they're ethical, and you ask these questions, as many as you want, to actually gauge how ethical and knowledgeable that they are is really important, because at the end of the day, as the IRS has stated in tax court numerous times, if you sign off on that return, it also makes you perfectly liable as well. And I know it's not a great answer here, but...
Okay, but what if you don't tell me it's great? What if that's the way you do business, and it's always worked for 20 years, and you don't tell me it's great? How am I ever supposed to know?
I would, in the case of, let's say you got audited, and the auditor explained to you that this was the problem, you have the right to speak to the auditors. Or something I suggest with some of my clients is, you can grant me power of attorney to speak to an auditor for you, like in the interim stages of an audit. Don't do that first. Speak to the auditor yourself. Let them explain to you what's going on, and then come to me in a meeting. So now you have what they said to you, and then me and you can speak. If what I'm saying to you sounds a little bit shady or confusing, report me to the IRS. And that's how I would handle that with any professional that's giving bad advice. So just keep it to me, it's a simple guideline. So don't be afraid to engage with the IRS in that way. You have the right to have that meeting yourself, and you have the right to representation, but you want to make sure that representation is correct and they have your best interest in mind.
Yeah, no, I was just going to chime in. I used to be an accountant or a recovering accountant, but I do hire somebody else to do a lot of the stuff that you're inquiring about. And typically, where we kind of gotten our discussion points is around things that should be expensed or allowable expenses and things that technically aren't allowable expenses. And sometimes it comes down to, well, what's your policy? Like we just went through this with our tax return filing. So we historically expense things that are $2,000 and below. And so we may have some things that are sitting around that $2,000 mark. And so we'll have that discussion with our accountant. We never walked in and said, hey, we got this $5,000 expense, and we want to try and, or we incurred a $5,000 expense, we want to just write all of it off. Because historically, we've never done that. And so if we were to try and approach that, the relationship we have with our accountant, that makes them feel uncomfortable. And we went with the CPA partly because they got skin in the game. If they end up doing something that's unethical, they can realize it. Whereas though sometimes it's different with some of the different designations like some other ones that we showed. So now the accountants themselves have to be held kind of accountable because that's how they live their living. They got the CPA license. So that helps kind of with the advice that you're getting because they have to think about what they're saying relative to what kind of risk they're putting themselves in. So it is relationship driven, very much so because they are your number that you're bringing in. And then if you had a practice where you normally did certain things and now you're moving off of that, then that's something you guys need to talk through and kind of sort out. And it may be a situation where the accountant is not real comfortable moving.
And I do want to add, however, just this little tidbit, I can get fined a lot. And I can also lose my license as well. So part of that example, or part of a reasonable example is due diligence. So if you take the EIC credit, for example, which is the earned income credit for low-income individuals, I have to document every question that I ask you and keep that information for about 3 or 7 years. And if I don't, it's a $500 fine per client that I did that for. If I get too many fines, I would also lose my license. There are some people, CPA or EA, who kind of are a little more aggressive with air tax planning and have every right to do they want that, or they have more skin in the game and they feel comfortable making that argument. But like you said, it's relationship based, really. It's case by case as well.
It really is like how aggressive you want to be to a certain degree and how aggressive
lastly, we're going to go over some key questions to ask both of these professionals. So one is experience and qualifications. So how long have you been practicing? What are your areas of expertise? And do you have any experience with particular clients like myself? And then communication and accessibility. So how are you keeping informed? Is email, is phone call, how will I be updated as you work in my account? How often can I expect updates and reports? Is this monthly? Is this quarterly? Should I be bringing something to these meetings? Those are important to know. Who will be my main point of contact? Are you speaking to the owner of the business? Once you guys met, did he parlay you off to an intern, an associate, or one of those? And then what is your preferred method of communication? I think that to me is really important just because I do have an older client base who they don't have cell phones or they don't use their emails. So a lot of times it's just calling their landline if it's connected at the time. So that just knowing that is really important.
This is the one too, the typical response time.
Oh, and then the last question is, what is your typical response time for emails and calls? Again, that just helps manage expectations. Just to say up front, hey, we will automatically respond to you within 24 to 48 hours. If we don't, just give us a call, knowing that can help manage expectations so you don't feel ignored, particularly while the accountant in the business is great. So the next couple of questions to ask are fees and billings. So what's your fee structure? Will you be paying an hourly rate, a flat fee? There's no contingency for EAs, but that's fine. Or a retainer. What's your estimated costs for actually handling my account? Ask for a printed out, detailed, itemized list of the services that you're getting and how much they cost, so you can know that and compare that to the market. Are there any additional charges? We all hate to get quoted $300 and that final bill comes out at $5 and you don't know where the $200 came from. What are your payment options? Can I pay online? Can I pay with a credit card? Do you use digital cash app or Zelle? That is important as we move into the digital age. I know some people only pay with cash. I do not like that as an accountant, but that's okay. And do you offer payment plans or flexible billing options? I will say this from an accounting standpoint, this will vary. If you go to an H&R Block, a TurboTax deduction, you can pay for your fees out of your refund. I do not allow that at my practice. I know other colleagues of mine do not allow that just for liability purposes there. If the IRS or child support, someone garnished your return, I'm kind of just allowed to cut my fee. So just understanding that up front that payment is due or is due at the time of service is something I try to be as completely transparent about. Next is
Just a question on that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let's assume that you are making a payment and it says additional, you are charging. Okay, you are charging to your credit card or debit card. Do you guys have any additional fees for that?
There is a processing fee for the card server that I use, and it's on. So when you walk into my office on the front desk, it says payments due at the time of service, and then on your invoice, it will say, I think it's the 3% fee will be charged to credit cards as well. So yes, very
So, but
transparent
you
about that.
guys have to specify that percentage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be something you also would want to ask in advance as well when you're discussing the payment options. Are there additional fees for the method of payment? Most people disclose that in advance, but yeah, something you want to ask too.
For technology and security, what software or sources do you use? Again, accounting is an aging profession, so a lot of them just use QuickBooks and Excel, and they don't know what a server is or cloud-based things like that. So understanding how your data is kept secure in a digital age is to me very important. How do you ensure the security of my information? Like I just mentioned, like I have a server and I have a tiered, not the right technical term, but a two-tiered platform that I use for my clients to upload everything. So there are multiple steps of security so your information is safe once it gets in-house. And then how do you stay ahead of industry trends? This one is interesting to me. In a lot of my initial meetings with clients, I will bring up my booklet. It's 500 pages, and it's for all the tax laws that I've heard in 2024. I have to read all of that, and that's how I stay knowledgeable. I attend certain tax conferences and those sorts of things throughout the year, just like CPAs. We also have to get continuing education as well. So just staying on top of that is very important. And then next steps. So what are the next steps if we decide to hire you? Will your office manager or receptionist reach out to me? When's my next meeting going to be? What do you need from me? Just making sure that those clear guidelines are set in place so you understand and you're not just kind of getting lost in the weeds for work. And do we need to sign a formal agreement or retainer contract? To me, that is very, very important. We live in a very litigious society right now, and we don't want to get involved with he said, she said when it comes to professional services. So before I engage the client, you have to sign an engagement letter. The engagement letter is typically 6 pages. It is full with legal jargon, but it says very explicitly what you're hiring me for. If it's just for your 2024 tax prep, that's all it is. There's a section there that says if this turns into an audit, that it's a separate engagement. And you need that to protect yourself and for us to protect ourselves as professionals to say that this is what you agreed and these are the terms of services. So how do you actually find the right professional? The first one, and I would say is the most easiest one of them all, is a friend, family, or colleague. Asking around and seeing who do they use. I will say, do not assume just because they got a huge refund that you will get a huge refund because everyone's tax story is different. But if someone has built time and relationship with an accountant, maybe trying them out would be a bad thing. LinkedIn and professional services is a great way to see who's licensed in the community or who's around and who's taking on new clients. Community organizations and support groups are also options. There are also professional organizations that you can use to research the nearest licensed professionals. So the Illinois CPA Society will help you find a licensed CPA in the state. And then the National Association of Tax Professionals, which I am a part of, will help you find a licensed EA as well. And then there are other online directories. There's the AICPA, and then there's the NAEA, and again, respectively, searching for a CPA, searching for an EA. So these are just professional databases that you can use to find someone. And some of them let you get really specific. So you can say, I'm looking for a CPA or an EA who specializes in real estate, and they will pop up as well. So I would say, in conclusion, choosing the right accountant is crucial for your financial well-being, whether for personal financial management or business success. Take the time to interview potential candidates, ask for references, and assess their qualifications and capability with your financial needs and goals. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so just to repeat, your question is that you've been advised that it's okay to have separate professionals doing certain things like your bookkeeping, your taxes, your audits as well. I would say it really just depends on your needs. I don't necessarily see a problem with that. If we're getting information, for me, only the tax preparation side, I'm only going to get you a balance sheet and your receipt. And if you're trusting that the other professional did their job, then that means that I can do my job well. The con with that is I can't actually do my job well if the person before me didn't do it as well. So you do lose that consistency there of work quality, I will say. If I were to pull anything out, I would keep the audit shouldn't. No one in-house should ever be doing your audits or doing your audit financial statements. I would hire a third independent firm to handle those responsibilities. And then hiring a CFO or a fractional CFO to do those things in-house is also not bad. Typically, they work with your accounting team though. So I would say doing an in-house team of the bookkeeper, the tax preparer, and the CFO to work together to help your business internally, and then you give those records all to a third party to do the audit. It's probably the best way to have it.
And you also want to keep in mind too that, as Mandy's mentioning, the different people that you're hiring for those different things, right? So if you think about it, you are having a home built, right? And one contractor does one thing and a different contractor does something, and then there's a problem in the home. Those contractors are going to be like, oh no, that's their part that they didn't do, and this is that part that they didn't do, right? The same thing can occur in this situation. If he gets the P&L, like you said, that person's doing poor work on your bookkeeping and all of those things. If an issue comes up, they're like, no, well, I got this from them. And they're going to, no, well, they were supposed to review. But that might not necessarily be the case. So it might be more important for you to have that all in one house with one person doing it, but then like you mentioned, the third party will do the audit part to make sure that everything's fine.
Any other questions?
Actually, I have one more question. And it's regarding the software that you said. You mentioned the QuickBooks. Is that the only software that we have access to now?
No, but it really just depends on what you need. For an accounting software, you can use QuickBooks. It's the most common one. I'm not familiar with other accounting softwares out there, but I can research it and email you if you have any questions on those. For payroll services, there's a lot of their stuff, so you can use QuickBooks. There's ADP. To me, I do like ADP a lot with the three. So it really just depends on the service that you're providing. And like the tax prep software, those vary a lot. I use Great Tax. You can use Pro Series, which is pretty intuitive because it ties to QuickBooks. So let's say, for example, this is something I want to move to in the next couple of years. If I'm doing your monthly bookkeeping for you, I can actually code those transactions to where they go on the tax return, and then prepare the tax return through Pro Series, and then into it as well. So there's a lot of new technology out there as well. If you're interested in the list of just like accounting tech, I can.
Alright, so I'm going to cover the attorney section. And as I mentioned before, I'm not an attorney. I've hired 4 attorneys for various things during the time of my business. I used to think it was one of those situations where it's like, I would never want to have or deal with an attorney, and it's really not. So I'll go through it and share with you information regarding making decisions, kind of this very similar format that Mandy just went through on the accounting side. So, all right, understanding credentials. So first, it's not as simple as a comparison for how the accountants were set up and comparing that specifically to attorneys. But there are basically 3 kind of categories that you can consider or lump the attorneys in. The first is the first specialization. So obviously, every attorney that's out there typically has some type of a specialization that they are most familiar with, right? And then you have fields of corporate attorneys that might be a higher paying field. So typically that's going to be corporate lawyers, intellectual property attorneys, trial lawyers. They're usually on that higher end of acquiring the lawyer fee side of it. And then the third type are the state and federal practices. So those are going to be attorneys that are representing or more familiar with state and federal government type law. So as I mentioned, with the attorneys, there are over on the Illinois Bar Association, there's about 12 different categories that lump up attorneys, and there are 70 different specializations or more that an attorney can actually have. So the first, these are just a few that I kind of lumped together so you can get a kind of an idea of the different types of attorneys that are out there. So business and corporate attorneys are typically going to handle corporate like IP or intellectual property, your women and labor laws, your cybersecurity type laws. So a lot of those will fit within that category. Then you have your criminal defense lawyers. Those are the ones you hope you never have to call in the group that we're sharing. So public defenders, private criminal defense, DUI. Then you also have compensation and victim advocacy, so personal injury, medical malpractice, social security, and disability. Again, those are probably attorneys you don't want to have to call either. And then you have financial attorneys, so things related to bankruptcy, tax. Also another attorney you don't want to call. Maybe you don't want to call any attorneys. Then you have your contracts attorneys, so real estate contracts, contracts with your business that you may have with your clients. You're able to write your own contract, but it's good to have attorneys to review those and make sure that they are applicable to the law. And there's also entertainment sports attorneys, and then public interest, or civil rights, immigration, military, environmental. So as I mentioned, this is just a very small sampling of those multiple categories and the various attorneys that you may need. So I always, and my sister-in-law is an attorney as well. So whenever I ask her a certain question, she's always reminding me of this very statement. So this came from her. Would you go see a dentist if you needed a heart transplant? And I'm like, of course not. So you don't want to find an attorney that doesn't specialize in the need that you have, right? So every attorney doesn't know every single thing. Most of them know simple contract agreements, right? They can land an agreement. But if you're needing something specific, you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence to find the attorney that is representing that need in that particular category. So how do you go about doing that? First, you're going to identify your need. So the service side of it, specific service. So think about, are you going to need this ongoing with this attorney, or is this maybe a one-time situation that you need this person for? So for example, I just had my federal trademark filed when I hired an attorney to do the federal trademark for my company. So that was a one-time application, and then it renews it every 5 years. So I dealt with that attorney during that period of time, and then I would reach out again, or they'll reach out to me when it's time to recertify that trademark. Then you may also need to identify the key legal area that you are needing to consult on. So is this regarding a bankruptcy? Do I want to sell my business? Do I want to do financial planning and put my will and make sure all my probate is in order as I transfer this over to my family? Those might be things that you need to consider. And then determine what type of representation that you may need. So is this person doing legal representation? Do I need this attorney as a mediator? Do I need them for just advisory? I need sound direction on how I need to proceed, or how I need to work with my clients to make sure within my business I'm doing things correctly with the law there. Then you're going to look at the complexity and the size. So you're going to want to consider consider, is this a straightforward case? You know, is this just an agreement that I need created because I'm going to be engaging with my clients and I want to make sure that the things that I put in our contracts that they sign to retain services, you know, are legal. So is it that, or is it very complex? Am I about to, you know, do something that's high stake or you know, maybe this is a criminal situation in a case where, you know, something has occurred and you're being claimed or someone's got a litigation against you that you're considering complex that's going to require, you know, research and a defense team and all of that. And then what to do as far as whether or not you want to acquire a solo attorney, or does this attorney need to be a small firm that has multiple people that can support you, or do you need a very large firm? In this case, something that you're going to need them to have a large team that's very experienced bringing on board. And then determine what your case may require. So again, litigation, is this negotiation that's needed? Is this dispute resolution that's needed? Because those are the things you're going to want to make sure that as you're asking questions of this particular attorney that they're familiar in all of these particular areas. Then the industry expertise is a very, very important part, especially if you are going to court and there's a trial. There are fines associated with even jail time. You're going to want to ensure that the attorney that you're acquiring is very specialized in what they do. You are the one, again, responsible in this situation. We also talked, you know, about on the accounting side, they follow a return, the IRS audits it, you're responsible there, but you're absolutely responsible for being charged in your case. So you want to make sure that that attorney is very experienced in their field. You want to make sure that they understand the specific state law. Not all attorneys are versed across different states. I know the Illinois Department of Transportation needs you to work with other states. We're very close to St. Louis and do a lot within the Missouri area, Indiana. So you want to make sure that if there's something that's going to cross lines, that attorney either has the resources to ensure that it's accurate and they have the information, or they themselves can operate in those jurisdictions. And then you're going to also want to check on the previous experience, you know, similar cases that they may have had, and then most importantly, the successful outcomes of those cases. It's great if they've had 100 cases where they lost all of them. That might not be going to be one higher, right? All right, so once you identify your need, you're going to go into what questions to ask. Manny covered a lot of the core questions of accounting and an attorney if you want to reference as well. So all of those things that he mentioned, fee structure, all of that are still important to ask this attorney as well. Some additional questions that you may want to ask an attorney are related to your case strategy and approach. So you may want to ask them, how do you typically approach cases like mine? What are possible outcomes for my case? And what challenges do you foresee in my case, right? Especially if that's going to trial or litigation between the jury, you want to go and understand what this outcome, in addition to mediation as well. In case that you're filing for mediation, you want to know what those resolutions might look like and how you can manage and handle that. Obviously, I'm glad I haven't had yet any of these experiences, but I'm sure in those particular situations it's stressful, you know, on you as well, and impacts you as an individual. So being able to have those conversations and then being able to explain and make sure that you're comfortable is also very important. And then the client relationship and ethical consideration. So do you have any conflicts of interest in taking my case? So you're going to want to ensure that if they are representing other clients or representing other clients in the past, that there's no conflict of interest, and if so, they're disclosing that. They should automatically know that there's a conflict of interest and mention it to you, but it's always good to ask just in case. And then can you provide references from past clients, is a good one. And then have you ever been disciplined by the state bar association? So that's also very important as well. I've heard situations where attorneys have still been practicing after they've been disbarred or they're pending, right? So we just want to make sure that we ask, and then there are also resources they can from, and we'll talk about those as well. So now that you have identified your need, you've asked key questions, next you're going to look at how do I go about finding, you know, the questions to ask her. How do I go and find this question? So Manny also touched on referrals. So again, LinkedIn, asking a friend, asking colleagues, asking one attorney if they know another attorney that specializes within a particular field and that they recommend. The next thing would be the professional organization. So the Illinois State Bar Association is a good one, the local county bar associations. If you're needing an attorney in a different state, we're looking for like Missouri State Bar as well, or the county that we're looking for there. Then there's the Lawyer Association, and the example would be NELA, and then Legal Services Corp, which is lsc.gov. And then online directories, so the ABA, the American Bar Association, has a lawyer referral directory as well. When you reference that and you put in Illinois, it will take you over to the Illinois State Bar Association site, and then all of the attorneys are referenced there as well.
One other one I've had with the trade association. Sometimes they'll come like conferences like this, or small group opportunity, they'll come to presentation, and that's another opportunity to meet with attorneys, especially if it's on specific stuff.
Pertaining to this, yeah. So for those on the recording, trade associations as well. So yeah, that's a perfect one. There's an organization to reference as well. And then so online directories. There's also Martindale Hubble and then Nolo. I've never used those two specifically, but they are sources that are out there. So definitely vet those sources too when you're utilizing and getting your information back. So my presentation is easy. We're already at the conclusion. Andy did all the hard work by design. So remember that hiring an attorney is a significant decision, and you should take your time to research and interview potential candidates to find the right fit for your needs. Don't be afraid to ask questions and seek multiple consultants before making a final decision. And then the next steps when it comes to actually making a decision, you first are going to want to determine which professional you'd like to go with. You next will schedule a consultation or a meeting with them and arrange the final meeting of the top choices, asking the specific questions that you have and the expectations that you have to help analyze that you're going to review the engagement agreements that they have. So you should be entering into a contract with this attorney. They'll have an engagement letter. That's where they'll disclose, making sure that there's no conflicts of interest on other cases that they might pick up. So review that document for your engagement, and then begin your onboarding process with them. So you're going to ask for any necessary documents or financials. These steps also pertain to working with an accountant as well. Next, you'll want to establish a communication plan with them. So how often are you getting updates on your case or your filings? And then what's the best way to reach out to them? So all that will be clear. And then set clear expectations for deliverables and timelines as well. So that will know when it is, in their feelings if things are taking longer than expected. Sometimes I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I drop my taxes off like a week before the final deadline, and then later I'm like, wait, you had to do an extension? But I dropped it off 7 days ago. And they're like, man, it doesn't work that way. So making sure that you have those conversations regarding the timelines as well. So any questions? I was there, look at me. So I appreciate all of you guys attending the session. As I mentioned, if you are IDOT certified, there are support services that can support and help you, especially with your QuickBooks setup and some of the accounting things. We don't do anything as it relates to law, obviously, but we're happy to suggest the resources that we have in the slide. I'll have my business cards up here. If you do want the presentation, please grab a business card and email me, and I'll make sure I send that presentation back to you. And then Manny and I will be around the conference. We'll also be at the supportive services table through the week. So if you have additional questions that you think of, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Actually, I have a question. It might be within accounting or maybe the law, but I can reason that it's considered a corporation, but I never realized that there is an S corporation. And so, how do we know, or how can I make sure that from now on that we do the filing as an S corporation, or do we have to initially legally an S corporation to be able to do the taxes as an S corporation?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a wonderful question. So I'm going to defer a little of it to Manny, but first, let me repeat the question for those that are on the recording. The inquiry is about your corporation and an S corporation and how that would work as it relates to the legal side and also the accounting side of things. So your corporation essentially gets set up initially. That can be done by yourself, or you can hire legal counsel to help set the corporation up. That portion is done typically with your Secretary of State's office. The S Corp indication is the tax indication. So I will let Manny speak to that My company is an S corp, so I've learned these things as I've gone.
So your company would file a 2503, which is an election to become an S corp with the IRS. Again, that's something that you can technically do yourself, but I would refer to a tax expert for that particular election there. And then what other follow-up questions did you have?
Well, that was my main concern. I mean, when I registered the business, I didn't know anything about like an S corporation. A corporation to me was a corporation. I didn't know any difference about it.
Got it. Yeah, so you can either be a corporation, so to me I would say that whether you have 100 plus shareholders or what those sorts of things, or you plan on being publicly traded. You can be an S corporation or a small business, and so that's just an election that you make with the IRS. And I'm going to take a step back here in a second. Or you can be a partnership. And so that's typically just a multi-member LLC. So anytime two people go into business with each other, even if you form an LLC, it's going to automatically be bumped up to a partnership. You have your legal entities, so your corporation, your partnership, and your LLC, and then you have your tax entities, which is your S corp and your partnership. So what I mean by that is you can form an LLC through the Secretary of State, but that doesn't mean anything from a tax perspective. An LLC is just a disregarded entity. It's reported on the Schedule C. It doesn't really mean anything. You can go from an LLC and then be asked to be taxed as an S corp. So then you would actually file an 1120S tax return. You would get a K-1 from that tax return and those sorts of things. And if you have more, then we can have a more detailed conversation about that as well later. If you have any questions, I can as well.
No, I am concerned about it because somebody was mentioning about withdrawing some money from capital gains. It's like, now, because you are a corporation, you have to pay the taxes on that, but if you were an S corporation, you would not have to pay the taxes. Or at least the minimum taxes, I would say.
There's an asterisk by that as well, and I'm only getting passionate about that just because I have to repeat this quite a bit. When you are an S corporation, you have to take payroll. So you have to take something that the IRS deems as reasonable compensation. And so that is a number, an adjustable number that you can work with a professional on. But typically what the IRS says is how much would you pay someone else to do your job? So once you establish that reasonable compensation number, then you can take money out of the business tax-free if there's basis. Now we're getting a little bit into the weeds there, and again I can explain this to you later, but you can pull money out tax-free if those other things are being done.
What about if it was a loan for myself to the company and then now I'm trying to withdraw it?
That's fine, as long as it had actual documentation. So just write up, you can write up an Excel sheet or a Word doc or something, but make sure it's a formal, actual loan. Because as we've seen in the tax court, people always throw that case around, I'm going to try to win myself money. Well, they're going to ask, if it's not a real loan, that's not a real loan. So just make sure the documentation for those things are just as tight as ever.
And just to put a little juice in there, what about, okay, let's say that I borrow myself $50,000, but now let's say that I'm paying back myself $51,000. The $1,000 extra, I would have to pay taxes on.
If you borrow $50,000 from your business,
No, I lend the business $50,000. But now because I did not use any of the funds, that's at least something which is come from the expense account, interest. So I pay myself $51,000 instead of the $50,000 I borrowed.
there's a specific way to handle that, and I can give a little bit more detail on that. There's a way you can report on your K-1 and those sorts of things, and make sure your balance sheet actually says loan from shareholder. And there's a special way to account for that interest, but yeah, you can do that.
And I think it's important too with this question that a lot of times, especially companies that I help getting started they typically, the first thing they do is go register their company. So they go to the Secretary of State, they decide to be an LLC, they decide to be a corporation, and a lot of times when I ask them why did they select this entity, or the choice for the entity, a lot of them don't even have an idea why they did it. A friend told them to go create an LLC or whatever. There's no logic behind why they selected this thing. I know for a while the fees for LLC were way less than the fees for the filing of corporations. So many people were like, oh, it's just cheaper when I went to the site, it was only $125 to do this one, it was like $250 for the other one. So I just picked the LLC. And I would very highly encourage that you or anyone that's going to start a business prior to selecting the entity that you are going to set up for your company, that you do meet with the accountant first so that they can explain to you what type of entities and tax ramifications for each of those and how those happen and occur. Luckily, I was mentored by someone that told me first to go talk to the accountant, so they were able to explain to me the difference between the corporation, the S corp, and taking a salary, what the LLC would look like, and I was able to make an informed decision what was best for me to set the company as well. So, and then once you are one of these entities, they can be changed in nature, but you you're definitely going to want to consult with your accountant again to understand what the tax ramifications will be to convert from an S corp back to a corporation or converting over to some other type of entities as well. So.
One last note, if you have time. This is really just combining both the accounting side and the legal side. Another reason that's really important to understand your business entity is because, again, there are legal entities and there are tax entities. And what you don't want to do is, if you start an LLC, for example, there are no real tax benefits of being an LLC. Like I said, it's just simply a disregarded entity from the IRS standpoint. It's reported on the personal record. However, you are drawing a line called corporate veil at that point, and you have your personal assets over here and you have your business assets over here. And that corporate veil is very, very important, and you never want to see it pierced. So something that I've seen a lot is a lot of my clients, or some of my clients, where they'll start pulling money out, thinking that it's theirs, or it's their business, or those sort of things, or I took a loan out, or whatever excuse a client can give for pulling money out of business, where they pierce that corporate veil. Because if you take your business debit card and you swipe it at Disney World, and you get audited, and now we're going through your bank statements, and you've now seen that you commingled funds, and now you've destroyed that veil, and now your personal assets and your business assets are both at risk. So just understanding, like, again, that legal entity versus that tax entity, because they're not the same thing. Your legal entity could be that LLC, your tax entity could be that S corporation. So just understanding those differences are very important.
So don't mix your funds, keep your bookkeeping separate, make sure your personal stuff is spent out personal, and your business is stayed on the business side. As soon as you cross those over, you could, if someone decides to sue you, now your personal assets are also included in that lawsuit. So you want to make sure you keep those absolutely separate. Now, if there are situations where you accidentally swipe the business debit card and you're buying something personal, you still can document the bookkeeping transfer to make sure that those are where they're supposed to be. But you do want to make sure that you keep those separate. So that's why good bookkeeping records are very, very important in this situation as well.
And there are ways to get reimbursed for those personal expenditures, but that goes beyond the 3 sessions of course here.
I have a question. Sorry about this again. Maybe it's not something that you guys are really aware of, but nevertheless, I was under the assumption that if we have an LLC, actually, so the reason why I don't have a sole proprietor business is because my personal belongings will in the house. If something goes wrong, I will lose that as well. But if I have an LLC, I mean, those things will be separate. I mean, at least they will go for whatever I own in the business, but not my personal stuff.
That's correct. When you do have an LLC or a sole prop or any of those things, that is that legal entity, so you do get that line as well. You just don't want to pierce it. So that's that corporate veil that I was referring to. When you start doing things like commingling personal funds and business funds, that's when you're inadvertently disrupting that corporate veil, and then that's when your personal assets would then be under attack or something like that.
Even if you didn't use it, never used a dollar to pay for a house, your house is paid for. But you swipe a vacation, and then they're gonna say now your house.
No, it depends. So like it's not a one and done, right? It's if you got audited, for example, and they deem that it's repetitive use. Because like I said, if you came to me in November and said, hey, I left my debit card at home, I only have my business debit card, we were at Disney World, I put $20,000 on there. We now have 2 months to figure out how to make that a deduction. Maybe you didn't have an account at the time, so that's free advice I was talking about. Maybe you can just start, there are other things we could do to like turn that into a deduction. What you don't want to do is do that frequently. That's more so the problem. You're not going to get audited the first time it happens, but you want to make sure you're disciplined enough to keep them separate.
And you have a good accountant, no question. What did you spend $20,000 on Disney World? So right, so
That's why monthly bookkeeping is important too, because I can catch that when you got back from vacation in November. I can't catch it next April when you already gave me your bank statement. I can't backdate that. So,
well, perfect.
Now, is there a minimum charge? I shouldn't say it that way. I guess maybe I should ask, would there be a place where we can go and find out what is the hourly or maybe a monthly charge that the accountants are supposed to be charging? I know, there's still guidelines that maybe you just want to pay a little more, or they offer more value to what we're asking, and they might charge a little bit more. But is there any way where we can find out what would be the kind of standard charges for the type of services?
Yeah, I think the best place is probably to connect with other peers who are using particular services. So the question was, can you find rates or what rates might make sense when you're looking to hire or acquire? And it's definitely going to vary because sometimes you might get an extra layer of service and someone's going to charge a little more for that, right? In the case of working with an attorney, you you may pay a lower rate for a particular attorney, but their experience might be lower as well, right? So if I'm just an attorney and I'm learning things and you hire me and I say I charge $100 per hour, it may take me 10 hours to go do that project for you. But you might have an attorney that's been doing it for years and they're like, I charge $500 an hour and they get you the answer in 2 hours, right? So it's going to vary. Now I got my response back, I got an experienced person, I did pay them a little more, but between the two, it's the same price, right? So those things are gonna vary. So it's gonna be important that you understand what service and what need you have, and then associating that to like the value of what that would look like. You can always do a search and say, what is the average CPA charge in Springfield, Illinois, or what is an average attorney in this specialty charge for this, but it's definitely going to vary by experience, and there'll be other factors pertaining to that. So just check with your other colleagues, see what they're paying, and if you're, paying $1,000 an hour, and someone else is like, oh, I'll pay $100 for that, and it's an equal level of service